Hey, what's up, everybody? Here today on the program, we have got another very special guest here. We have got Vaughn Vertigo from Ontario. Vaughn, how are you today?
I'm good, Des. How you doing?
Oh man, let me tell you, it's been a ride, man. It's been a ride. It's a lot of stuff going on, but we're staying strong, right? Staying strong.
We're all trying to get out of this quarantine alive, right?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it, right? Exactly. So how are things with you though? How are things on your end during lockdown?
Things are good. I mean, I started quarantine essentially when I got right back from the UK. I was I guess it was in Preston, England. I was about to do another 4 weeks of a UK tour I had going on, and I was like, oh, I should probably go home because the world's ending essentially. So I had to fly home. Then I was immediately in a 14-day quarantine because Canada implemented that if you come from a different country, you have to immediately go into a 14-day quarantine. So the first month was rough, but luckily I live in a small town, so I was able to get out and go for walks along like the river and whatnot. But I'd say in the past month it's been a lot better now that I've been working on this Backyard Pro project.
Perfect, man. So obviously, jumping right in here, you're a pro wrestler. Tell me how you got started with this. Where did the journey begin for you? Like, were you always a fan of pro wrestling?
I definitely wasn't always a fan. I went to school with this guy named Wayne Fryer, who his aunt was Trish Stratus. Now, I didn't actually really know too much about wrestling at all until I rented SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 from Blockbuster. So my introduction to wrestling was actually from a video game, coincidentally.
Nice.
So I started playing the game, and I remember looking through the characters, and I was like, "Oh, Trish Stratus is on it. That's your aunt. Like, what the hell? Like, that's." And then I got addicted to the games, and then started watching SmackDown on Fridays at the time in 2007. And then at the time we didn't have Raw, so my parents got me the channel for Raw, which I think was Sportsnet 360 at the time. I can't remember. Or not. Yeah. It would have been The Score.
Yeah.
Yeah. From there, I started watching wrestling more and more, and then by the time I was 14, there was a guy I know in Port Hope. Wasn't necessarily friends with the guy, but he knew about a wrestling school in Toronto, and he said, "Hey, do you want to come with me?" And I was like, "Absolutely!" I didn't realize I could actually start getting trained so young. So I went with him. My dad drove us up, and I started training at Squared Circle Training in Toronto.
So, like, when you started watching wrestling, you were like, "I want to do this." Like right away, that was just the first instinct was, "Hey, throw me in there."
Honestly, kind of, yeah. Because immediately I started a backyard. Well, actually, at the time, it was like a basement wrestling league at the time. Then I got a trampoline and became a backyard wrestling league. But yeah, immediately I wanted to do it. I don't know. I felt I'm very hands-on. Like I need to do things. So that's just how it worked out, really.
Did you guys also have cardboard titles, or did you go and have like the vinylette title with the cardboard plates? Because we had both for a while.
We used the WWE replica, not the metal replicas. Eventually, we got those, but we used like the plastic, like Walmart ones, essentially.
Yeah, same. We went all roads went there, but nobody wanted to share the plastic toys, so we ended up going with cardboard just so the winner could take it home.
Gotcha. See, what ended up happening with us, there was maybe 12 of us, and we ended up pretty much having like 10 championships. So pretty much everybody had a championship, which meant really nobody had a championship.
Yeah, if we're all Han Solo, then nobody's Han Solo, you guys.
Exactly. And that's what I kept explaining to them, and they didn't. Whatever. It was my company. I should have,
put the foot down, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome, man. So at what point then? So you started training. You started training at 14, very young. At what point did you like break into it and like start getting appearances and like having full on matches and started getting booked?
I didn't start doing matches till I was 17. Before that,
okay.
Pretty much everything you can on the ring crew. Camera work, reffing, and all that jazz, essentially. I think they wanted to, like, I was the youngest at my school until I was 18. So I think they wanted to wait to put me out in the wrestling. I think there was actually we used to have an athletic commission that wouldn't allow you to wrestle unless you were 18. So I think they were a little bit worried about that. But that kind of phased out just as I started.
Right.
Yeah, I started at 17 at Square Circle Live at the time, which was the parent company of the school, essentially. And then that ended up folding, and then I essentially just kind of, myself and Gabriel Flores, my tag team partner, we went out to a bunch of promotions in the area and just tried to, help out, and that led to more and more opportunities, essentially.
That's awesome, man. So how big is the scene then in Ontario? Like, what's it been like there where you're from? Obviously, you said, so you watched it on TV. Was it like, okay, we're going to wrestling this weekend? Like, there's shows every month kind of thing? How does that work?
I mean, I wasn't really aware of the indie wrestling scene when I was a fan of it.
Yeah.
There was one show that came to my town. I lived about an hour and a half outside of Toronto. that came to my town, and there was maybe 50 people that went from the town. I was sitting front row, and like my friends and I treated it like it was Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
And then when I started actually wrestling training, I learned about the more independent companies in the area. But I think it was, from what I've heard from the guys in the mid 2000s, there wasn't too much going on in Ontario. It all started to pick up probably around pretty much when I started getting into it, like 2013, 2014.
So now when you were training, you're learning the basics, you've got the basics down. At what point did you know what kind of style you wanted to have, like to adapt?
I don't know if it was necessarily but more so because of my size. I mean, I'm only 5'8". Most of my opponents are obviously going to be bigger than me, so I tend to lean towards the more high-flying style. But you can also tell in my work that if I'm wrestling someone who's more my size, we'll venture into more of a technical aspect. And
so a lot of people say that too. A lot of people say it about. I remember what was it? They just talked about that during one of the matches that we saw, where they said, like guys like Jungle Boy. Like smaller dudes are always used to fighting guys who are bigger than them. So it's not something that they have to prepare for in this fight, whereas somebody.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I look at it as a fight essentially. So, if I'm wrestling somebody who's bigger than me, I'm going to have to use my, my speed to get around them. But somebody who's my size, I can use a different technique,
Yeah, no, totally. And so now you just said you got back from the UK. I wanted to touch on that because obviously, a quick, YouTube search there. I was watching your matches and I'm starting to see you traveling up to the UK. How did that come about then from where you started wrestling here in Ontario there in Ontario?
So are you familiar with Smash Wrestling in Ontario at all? Have you heard?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So around 2016, I reached out to Smash Wrestling, the owner, Sebastian Suave. And I was kind of bummed because I was doing well in Ontario. I was getting booked enough, but I couldn't get on the bigger promotions in Ontario. So I kind of reached out to them and I was like, hey, like, what do I need to do to get on these promotions? Like, what do I need to do to get better? And at the time, they're like, honestly, man, like, just make a name somewhere else. And then if you build a name, you'll come here, essentially. And I was like, okay, sure. So I had known a guy named Oliver Peace in the UK who runs WrestleFlix UK. I had known him since I was a backyarder. He ended up training and starting this promotion. He said, hey, well, if you come over, I'll help you get booked on a bunch of shows. And I was like, okay, sure. Like, and I can stay at your place. That's wonderful. Absolutely.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So my first UK match ended up being for GOA Pro Wrestling, and it was against Kip Saban. Now, Kip is a guy who literally went out of his way to help me learn the scene and help me get to know everybody. And I'm always thankful for him. So that turned into another trip, which turned into another trip, which turned into getting on Attack Pro Wrestling and a bunch of other promotions in the UK. And then this last trip was supposed to be another 6-week tour that myself and Brent Banks did last year. We were going to do it again. And then obviously the pandemic, so we never got to finish it.
Wow. So then now just to see, because I've seen the matches there. And so you're wrestling against these established guys on their scene, and you couldn't come from more outside the territory than where you're coming from. Right. So how does that translate to you then? How does that translate to the crowd? Is it that universal that you're obviously pulling your job as a face, that you're just like, hey, they're cheering for me because I'm the good guy here? Like, how do you connect with the crowds over there? Is it that different?
It is a bit different. I'm definitely more comfortable in a heel role when I'm over there because they're not as familiar with me. But there's a couple companies that I've been 3 or 4 times to since I've been over, so there are fans that are familiar with me.
Cool. And so then, there's something else we've run into here with my trainer. We're actually bringing wrestlers up here because I run.
You guys are bringing people from the Vancouver area, right?
Yeah, from the Okanagan. Yeah, so we've got guys from BC because that's been my goal. I think you're familiar with our backstory here at TAW, but we're learning to wrestle as well. But we want to put on wrestling here. We want to bring wrestlers up here and show the big matches, and then also learn from them while they're here, right? So as much as it is like a homegrown, hey, watch us learn kind of thing, we're also looking to bring big wrestlers up, or established people who know what they're doing, right?
Yeah, for sure, because it helps build your scene. And this is something that I actually discovered you guys from Mark AP. He runs C4 Wrestling in Ottawa. He actually posted something about you guys and how you guys were literally building your own scene. I remember thinking that's the coolest thing in the world. So immediately I started looking you guys up and following you guys, and it's incredible to see what you guys are doing.
Oh, thanks, man. No, and we're trying to do it right. You know what I mean? Because we know that there are a million backyard feds out there. Our trainers talk to us all the time and say, look, we're training you guys, so now you're representing us, not just yourselves anymore. So, you know, what you put out there is really important to all of us. So we are out there making sure we're doing everybody right, you know? So we want to stress that every chance we get is we're not just out there winging it on our own. Like, hey, we're going to get hurt and we'll figure it out. No, I'm 37. I can't afford that.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly. So what else are you seeing there these days? And there's like, obviously I'm friends with Ryan down there. Ryan runs Knights of the Squared Circle. He does interviews. He does VIPs for shows. So like there's a big scene down there. Can you talk to me about the independent scene now in Ontario?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of promotions running and quite a few that are on the top tier. The problem we have as a nation and as a province is it's getting the external viewers from the United States. Because, you know, the United States was such a big independent market in the mid-2000s. And then it kind of skipped over Canada and went to the UK for around like 2014 to 2016. So I don't know, like we as a province are trying to figure out like, what do we do to bring viewers in essentially? And I think one company that's doing that really well is Alpha One Wrestling, because they're constantly bringing wrestlers in from the States. And that's all due to Ethan Page, because he has a lot of can't think of the word, but
yeah. Well, he's got those connections, right? He's bringing the people in there.
Yeah, he's been in the American scene for a while now, so he knows who would get over essentially in Canada, who would help bring in eyes as well.
So now, do you think that like Impact with Anthem being here in Toronto in that area, that's also bringing a lot of eyes towards that Ontario scene, right? You're seeing guys that I'd followed on Instagram, like Josh, like Ethan before they got signed, and now that's even bringing me into a bigger realm of, hey, look at all these other guys. You know what I mean? So it's really showing me a new universe, I guess you could say.
Yeah, absolutely. And although Impact is Canadian, I think they tape only 3 or 4 shows a year probably in Ontario.
Okay.
Another issue is it's always going to be the border for us. There's tons of guys in Ontario who will get on Impact Wrestling, but they won't see the States because of the border unless they're able to get them a visa.
I see. Okay, yeah. And then we're seeing that too right now with COVID. Like we're looking at AEW. You know, you got Evil Uno and Stu Grayson, the 2 members of the biggest faction on that show, and where are they right now? Right? You know?
Yeah, they're stuck in Ottawa. So.
Yeah, I mean that's it, and that's the thing too is I'm learning so much because, like I said, for myself, I came into pro wrestling just after WrestleMania 8 into WrestleMania 9, into the early 90s. So that's when I started watching, and I still really haven't done my due diligence in my homework yet. Right, I haven't gone all the way back and watched the tapes, past WWF, like early Bruno, AWA. Like there's a whole lot of pro wrestling, even WCW. Even the early WCW, like of the Sting, the Vader, the Ric Flairs, I'm missing all that still, right?
I'm in the same boat as you. There's a ton of wrestling I haven't seen because I started watching wrestling in late 2006. Like there's a whole lot that I've missed that I've had to go back and watch. But
yeah,
there's just so much that has happened over the years, right?
Well, which is good and bad because I mean, obviously there are people who have been watching for 40 years that are just jaded to it, right? Because they're like,
you don't want to. It's too much is too much, right?
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. So I think it's great, though, for me. The one thing I really enjoyed, though, is watching is Dark Side of the Ring. That show has been amazing for me because I've learned this all firsthand, right? Like,
do you have a favorite episode from Dark Side of the Ring so far?
Oh, man, there's a couple. I mean, obviously, you think about Benoit, you think about the Owen episodes. But then when I think about the wrestlers I didn't know anything about, I think...
The Dino Bravo one I had literally no information about. I didn't realize how big the Montreal scene was at one point. And that story was incredible.
I was about to say the exact same thing. Looking back, I think Dino Bravo, like I said, with my wrestling experience, when I was introduced to Dino, he was a bad guy who was very flamboyant. And it was just like, there's nothing to like about this man,
They pretty much explain that in the Dark Side of the Ring about how,
yeah,
looking for him, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you sort of realize now is even like in my very, very little experience here in pro wrestling, sort of as a booker, as a creative side of it, you realize that, yeah, man, a lot of these decisions are not up to you. You know what I mean? A lot of this stuff is not up to you.
No, it's all from creative for sure.
Yeah, but that's exactly it, man. Honestly, so we talked about video games. I'm taking part in a video game workshop this week here. You got started in wrestling through video games. Tell me a bit about your, really quickly here, just obviously don't take your whole day. But talk to me about video games. And how long have you been playing video games?
So I actually got my first video game. I got my first. It was a PlayStation 2 in grade 3. So I never actually had video games until I was essentially 8 or 9. I don't know if that's I feel like that's not regular for kids. Most kids get that, at least at my age.
Yeah.
Although I'd go over to my friend's house and play Nintendo 64, but I had my tonsils out and my parents got me a PS2. And like, man, that opened me up to a world of a whole bunch of different things. And I pretty much spent my childhood inside playing video games, mainly, Grand Theft Auto, which I probably shouldn't have been playing at the time. The wrestling games came along, and then eventually I got an Xbox, played way too much Halo 3, that evolved into Call of Duty, which I had to stop myself from playing because I immediately got addicted to it. On the other hand, I've a lot of games I've enjoyed. Like Minecraft was a game that I played so much from. Yeah, Minecraft's a game that I kind of discovered in, I guess it was high school, that I was able to play with my friends online and just kind of, make this world.
Yeah.
From our own creation, essentially.
Yeah, and that's exactly like you talked about. Raised indoors. That was essentially me. I think I was maybe 6 or 7. I got the NES when it came out, and I was just.
Okay, sweet, yeah.
But those were back in the days when video games. I look back at even the NES to me was rough. A lot of the NES was sort of the beginning of them really being able to tell stories with video games. Prior to that, you had a lot of the what are we playing? Oh, that's a truck. Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, what is this?
Yeah, just your imagination was I can imagine back then the imagination was a lot being more strained than it is now. Because now we're in video games that are essentially just cinematic experiences where it's press X, press Y, you know what I mean? And that's what you're doing.
A lot of those games are fun. You're not really playing, you're just kind of going through the story and pressing a few buttons. Those are fun. And
that's exactly it. Yeah, totally. There's a thing for all of them there, and that's where I think we're at right now. Is we're at this sort of another renaissance of video games where we're seeing. We have. I hope AEW comes out with that old Aki engine for their video game. A lot of people talking about that old No Mercy from N64.
Yeah, it was go more back to the arcade style. Essentially.
Yeah. Exactly, really, because right now WWE has made a great simulator with their 2K series. Oh my gosh, it's a perfect simulator for what you see on WWE, right down to the stamina and the reversal limiters and the rest holds. It's WWE, but it's not. I miss the old style, like SmackDown, where you used to just fast bang 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 bang, right?
Just spot, right?
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
We grew up playing as kids, right? So we know that. But I think there's a place for both. The simulation is also something that I've very much enjoyed over the years as well.
Oh, totally. And I found that the WWE games got so good at becoming WWE, I was able to play them and just not even watch the product when I was getting upset with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can make whatever you want to see, right?
Yeah. No, totally, man. Totally. Well, awesome. So look, honestly, thank you so much for the time taken. Anything else you wanted to share with us today here? We've got your Twitter here. Anything else you want to share with the audience here? Please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're starting a backyard wrestling company in the midst of the pandemic right now, where it's essentially pro wrestlers pretending to be backyarders. You can check us out on Twitter at Pro Backyard, on Facebook at Backyard Pro Canada. We're going to be having our first show. Well, we'll be airing our first show in the next week. It's kind of a mixture of cinematic wrestling and ridiculous comedy wrestling. So I hope people enjoy it. Essentially, it's going to be very ridiculous.
Oh man, I can't wait. That's so cool that you guys are able to do that, because right now, the territorial government is in a place where they're saying social distancing needs to be enforced, regardless. So I was like, we're rolling around, we're doing our, bumps, but
yeah,
I want to grab, I want to be able to actually get some lockups in here and try some holds out. Right. So,
yep, exactly. You just got to try to keep it within the law as much as you can.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it, man. Awesome. So thank you so much there. Vaughn Vertigo, everybody. Check them out. YouTube, Facebook. Check them out. Their Backyard Pro Wrestling. It's going to be awesome. I'm already looking forward to it, man. Honestly, it's so great to see people who know what they're doing pretending like they don't know what they're doing. I can't wait to see it, man. I can't wait to see it.
It's ridiculous.
Awesome. Okay. Cheers, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, thank you, everybody, for subscribing, for liking our show here. Check us out, DezLoreen.com, The Deztro Show on Facebook and YouTube. Stay safe, everybody, and love one another.